Alright guys, we're on chapter 17 of Ivan Turgenev's First Love. On the following day I caught only a brief glimpse of Zenaida. She was going somewhere in a cab with the old princess. On the other hand I saw Lucian, who barely greeted me, and Malevsky. The young count smiled and began talking to me with great affability. Of all the visitors to the lodge, he alone had managed to insinuate himself into our house, and succeeded in making himself very agreeable to my mother. My father did not care for him and treated him with an almost offensive politeness. "Ah, Monsieur le Page," Malevsky began, "delighted to see you. And what is your lovely queen doing?" His fresh, handsome face was so repulsive to me at that moment, and he was looking at me with such an expression of disdainful amusement that I did not reply at all. "Are you still annoyed?" he went on. "You really shouldn't be, after all. It wasn't I who called you a page. They're usually to be found with queens. But let me tell you that you are not carrying out your duties at all well." "Oh, and why not?" Pages ought never to leave their mistress's side, or pages ought to never leave their mistress's side. Pages should know everything their mistresses do. Indeed, they should watch them," he added, lowering his voice, "day and night." "What do you mean by that?" "Mean by it? I should have thought I had made myself clear enough. Day and night. In the daytime it doesn't perhaps matter quite so much. It is light and there are lots of people about. But night, that's when anything may happen. My advice to you is not to sleep at night, but keep watch with all your might. Remember the garden at night near the fountain. That is where you must watch. You'll thank me for this yet." So it's kind of sounding like he knows. So Malevsky laughed and turned his back on me. Probably he attached no great importance to the words he had just spoken to me. He was a notoriously successful practical joker, celebrated for his skill in bamboozling people at fancy dress parties, an art greatly enhanced by the almost unconscious mendacity which permeated his whole being. He only wanted to tease me a little, but every word he uttered ran like poison through my veins. The blood rushed to my head. "Aha, so that's it," I said to myself. "I see. So it wasn't for nothing that I felt drawn into the garden. But no, it shall not be," I cried loudly, striking myself on the chest with my fist, although I was not quite clear about what it was precisely that was not to be. Whether it is Malevsky himself who will appear in the garden, he might well have let it slip out about himself. He was certainly impudent enough. Or whether it is someone else, the fence round our garden was very low, and there was no difficulty about getting over it. Whoever he is, he'll be sorry when he falls into my hands. I wouldn't advise anybody to cross my path. I shall show the whole world and her, the traitor — I actually used the word traitor — that I know the meaning of revenge. I returned to my room, took out of the writing table an English penknife I had recently purchased, felt the sharp edge, and with a frown of cold and concentrated resolution, thrust it into my pocket as if this kind of thing was nothing new or strange to me. My heart rose angrily within me and turned to stone. All day I wore a stern scowl, and from time to time, with my lips tightly pressed, I would walk up and down, my hand in my pocket, clutching the knife grown warm in my grasp, preparing myself long in advance for something terrible. These new unfamiliar sensations proved so absorbing and even exhilarating that I scarcely thought about Zenaida herself. I saw constant visions of Aleko, the young gypsy. "Whither, O handsome youth, lie still? Then bespattered art with blood. What hast thou done? Nothing." With what a cruel smile I kept repeating this "nothing" again and again to myself. My father was not at home, but my mother, who had for some time been in a state of almost continuous dull exasperation, noticed my look of doom and said to me at supper, "Why are you sulking like a mouse in a grain bin?" At which I merely gave a condescending smile and thought, if they only knew. It struck 11. I went up to my room but did not undress. I was waiting for midnight. At last it struck. "Time," I muttered through my teeth, and buttoning myself up to the throat and even rolling up my sleeves, I went into the garden. I had already selected the exact spot for my vigil. At the end of the garden, at the point where the fence which separated our possessions from the Sazyekins ran into the common wall, grew a solitary pine tree. Standing under its low, thick branches, I could observe, as far as the darkness of the night permitted, all that went on round me. At the foot of the tree ran a path which had always been full of mystery for me. Like a snake, it wound its way under the fence, which bore the marks of climbing feet, and led up to a round arbor made of thick acacias. I made my way to the pine tree, leaned back against its trunk, and began my watch. The night was quiet and still like the night before, but there were fewer clouds in the sky, and the outlines of the bushes, even of the taller flowers, stood out more distinctly. The first moments of waiting filled me with agonizing suspense and almost with terror. I had resolved to stop at nothing, but I was still trying to decide what to do. Should I thunder forth, "Where are you going? Stop, tell all, or die"? Or should I simply strike? Every sound, every rustle and whisper seemed oddly significant and strange. I was ready, I was all alert. I leaned forward, but half an hour passed. In an hour my blood grew quieter, colder. The thought began to steal into my brain that it had all been quite pointless, that I was actually making myself a little ridiculous, that it was only a practical joke on Malevsky's part, that I left my ambush and wandered round the entire garden. All was quiet, not a sound could be heard anywhere. Everything was at peace, even our dog slept curled up by the gate. The dog's like, damn, you're tripping. I climbed up on to the ruined greenhouse and saw the long open prospect of the fields before me, remembered the meeting with Zenaida, and lost myself in thought. I started. I thought I heard the creak of a door opening, then the faint sound of a snapping twig. In 2 leaps I got down from the ruin. I stood frozen to the spot. There was a sound quite distinct of footsteps, rapid, light, but cautious in the garden. They were coming towards me. Here he is at last, raced through my heart. Convulsively I whipped the knife out of my pocket and frantically I forced it open. Queer red spots danced before my eyes and my hair stood on end in an agony of fury and terror. The footsteps were coming straight towards me. I stooped and crouched forward to meet them. A man appeared. Oh God, it was my father. I recognized him at once, although he was completely muffled in a dark cloak and his hat was pulled down over his face. He tiptoed past without noticing me, although nothing concealed me, shrunk, huddled and crouched so low that I was almost level with the ground. Jealous Othello, ready for murder, was suddenly transformed into a schoolboy. I was so terribly startled by my father's unexpected appearance that in the first instant I did not even notice where he had come from and where he had vanished. I want to highlight that part. Othello, ready for murder, turned into a schoolboy. It took me a moment to get up and to ask myself, why should my father be wandering about at night in the garden? When all grew silent round me again, in my terror I dropped the knife in the grass, but did not even look for it. I felt dreadfully ashamed. All at once I was quite sober again. On my way back to our house I did, however, go up to my seat under the alder tree and glance up at the window of Zenaida's bedroom. The small, slightly curved window panes gleamed with the dim blue light under the pale radiance of the night sky. All of a sudden their color began to change. Beyond them I saw quite distinctly a whitish blind pulled down cautiously and gently to the windowsill, and it stayed down like that, quite still. What is all this? I said aloud, almost against my will, when I was back again in my room. A dream, a chance coincidence, or... The ideas which suddenly entered my head were so new and strange that I did not dare let myself dwell on them. What is all this? A dream, a chance coincidence? The ideas which suddenly entered my head were so new and strange that I did not dare let myself dwell on them. Damn. I mean, it's fucked up for a boy.